Hi, everybody. Okay, today we're going to do a slightly harder topic, which is all about modifiers and when they are not in the right place in your sentences. So, first we need to talk about what modifiers are, right? So to modify something means to change it. So you'd have the original thing, right? And if you modify it, you are making some changes to make it better. In this case, with sentences, you have a basic sentence, and if you are adding a modifier, you are adding some more information to make your sentence better, to make it more detailed. But of course, you're adding that information usually to describe something in more detail or to add some enhanced ideas of what the action is all about. So we're going to take a look at modifiers together, and we're going to learn about what things look like when they're just not in the right place. They're not in the right place. All right, so hang in there. Let me get my screen shared for you and start the presentation. Okay, going back from the very beginning. Let me change this around so you have a better view. Here we go. We are talking about misplaced and dangling modifiers. And before we even go any further than that, while I had talked about what modifiers are, remember they change or enhance the sentence by adding more to it. They can be misplaced or dangling. When you misplace something, that means it's not in the right place, because miss means it's not, right? So it's not in the right place in the sentence. Dangling, if something is dangling, it's kind of hanging there and it's not being rescued and there's no place for it to go. It's just kind of hanging there and swinging. So in a sentence, if something is dangling, if a modifier is dangling, it's just there, but it's really not securely attached to anything because whatever it's meant to be describing simply isn't present in the sentence. So let's take a look at these two. We're going to start with misplaced modifiers. That's the easier of the two. And then we'll take a look at dangling modifiers. This is in chapter 21 of your book. So having your book with you is definitely helpful for this chapter. Let's take a look. All right. This sounds really hard. Okay, but it's not. You just need to pay careful attention to the sentence structure and how it's written. Also, if it's your sentence, how you are writing it. Let's take a closer look. Here's the first big idea. Whenever you are describing a noun, put the description next to the noun that you're describing. The only time this does not apply is when it's a predicate adjective and it's coming after the verb to be. But really, when you are describing something, you want them right next door. You want them cuddling up next to each other. You want them to be friendly. Let's take a look. The man bought a tie at the department store with yellow and blue stripes. I know. You understand what this means. I understand what this means, but this is still a weird sentence. Taking a look at that last prepositional phrase with yellow and blue stripes. I mean, of course it belongs to the tie, unless he's referencing IKEA, because IKEA is blue with the yellow stripe, right? But it's probably not about IKEA. We need to take that prepositional phrase and we need to move it next to what it's actually describing. It's not describing the department store. What is it describing? Well, take a look at the other nouns in the sentence. What is it describing? Is it describing the man or the tie? Oh, It's describing the tie. Because it's describing the tie, we want to move that description right next to the noun it is describing. So get that over there. Rather than being by the department store, because it's not talking about the department store, we need to get it next to the noun tie. Is it that easy? It sure is. Take a look at this sentence. The black car ran the intersection with the tinted windows. First of all, let's look at the base sentence. The black car ran the intersection. What does it mean to run the intersection, by the way? Do you recognize this phrase? To run an intersection means to go right through where two roads meet without stopping. So they didn't stop at the red light like they should have, or the stop sign like they should have. They just kept going. Definitely not safe, right? That's what it means to run an intersection. You go right through it when you should have stopped. But that's not the problem, although it could have been a big problem. The real problem is the prepositional phrase. Do you see it? With the tinted windows. Right now, it is next to the noun intersection. Does the intersection have tinted windows? Definitely not. So where do we need to move it? We need to move it right next to the noun it is describing. So it's a prepositional phrase. It comes right after it. Let's take a look. The black car with the tinted windows ran the intersection. That is a much better sentence. Makes a lot more sense. Let's try it again. Tulips bloom each spring in the front yard. Okay, that's kind of good. You might see it, but there's a way to make it better. There's a way to make it much more clear. What's out of place? In the front yard. Yes, you'll often see modifiers in prepositional phrase format, right? Because again, remember, what's the purpose of a prepositional phrase? It's to show added information, especially when it's concerning position, right? And so we are giving some additional information. We are modifying the basic sentence, tulips bloom. And here we're taking in the front yard and we're attaching it onto the noun spring. Does that make sense? No. Where does it need to go? It needs to go next to tulips, right? And so your sentence looks like this. The tulips in the front yard bloom each spring. Much better. Remember, put the description immediately next to the noun it describes. The only time this doesn't apply is when you are using a predicate adjective describing the subject after the verb to be. It goes subject, the verb to be, and then the adjective that describes the subject. That's the only time. Otherwise, if you're describing a noun, get those adjectives and get that description next to that noun. All right. Here's like 1B. So put the description next to the noun it's describing. And yes, this definitely includes words like almost, only, nearly, and even. And there's also a few more out there as well. Let me show you what I mean. There is a difference. There is a difference between these two sentences. I have nearly 100 coins. I nearly have 100 coins. We've changed the location of two words. We've simply swapped their places. And yet the meaning, believe it or not, is really different. What is the meaning of the first sentence? What is the meaning of the second sentence? In the first sentence, to have nearly 100 coins We need to take a look at what's coming after the word nearly. To have nearly 100 of something means that you are very close to 100, maybe 98, 99, 97, something really close to that number. Nearly 100, almost 100, very, very close. Not exactly, but very close. Nearly 100. In the second sentence, nearly isn't describing 100. It isn't modifying 100. It's modifying the verb have. To nearly have something means you almost have it, but not yet. In other words, I don't have those coins yet, but soon, very soon, I'm close to getting 100 of them all at once. That's a really big difference, isn't it? Remember, it's all about that very next word. So we want to watch these little guys and we want to make sure we're putting them in the right place. This is going back to a misplaced modifier. It's in there, it's doing a job, but it's maybe not doing the job you intend it to do. So you just need to make sure it's in the right place so your sentence is saying what you want to communicate. Take a look again at this example. We're going to talk about cookies. I nearly left all the cookies on the counter. Let's change the position of nearly. I left nearly all the cookies on the counter. I have a question for you. In which sentence did I almost forget all the cookies on the counter? Sentence 1 or sentence 2? That's right. It's the first sentence. I nearly left all the cookies on the counter. Notice that nearly is right next to left. It's right before the word left. And so that's what it's describing. That's what it's modifying. That's what it's trying to change. I left all the cookies on the counter. No, I nearly left all the cookies on the counter. I remembered them just in time and grabbed them. Whew, that was close. I almost did it. I almost left them all on the counter. If you have a dog or teenagers or a husband or a boyfriend or family that really likes to eat the cookies, maybe you know what I'm talking about, right? You need those cookies for an event. And if you leave them in the kitchen, somebody's going to come along and eat them all up. So you need to go ahead and remember them before somebody else gets to them, right? All right. So if we're taking a look at these two examples, again, here's that second example. I left nearly all the cookies on the counter. It's a different sentence. It's a different sentence, so you can see the comparison. Now, if we take a look at the two sentences again, take a look at these two sentences again. What does that second sentence mean? Rather than saying, I nearly left all the cookies on the counter, what does it mean if I say, I left nearly all the cookies on the counter? Can you explain that? Okay, well, it means maybe I'm a little bit of a cookie monster, right? If we say, I left nearly all the cookies on the counter, that means maybe I took a few of them to eat. Maybe I had a few for a snack. Not all the cookies were on the counter. Nearly all of the cookies were on the counter. I grabbed a few. I grabbed a few. So putting those modifiers in the right place is really important. Just remember, you place those single word modifiers immediately before the word you're trying to change or modify. Okay, put it before it. Put it before it. It's just a matter of placement. Oh, we're crying. Why are we cried? Why are we crying? I cried through the whole movie. Now, taking a look at this sentence, I want you to do the following. I want you to add the modifier nearly to this sentence so that the sentence now means that I watched and cried at the same time. Okay. So while I was watching the movie, I was also crying. Where would you put that? Yeah, this is tricky, right? All right. So you want to put it right here. I cried through nearly the whole movie. There's probably a part of the movie where I wasn't crying, but not much of it, right? I pretty much cried the entire time through nearly the whole movie, right? I cried, I watched the movie, and I cried almost the whole time. Almost the whole time. All right, take a look at this sentence. How about this? I cried when I won the lottery. Whoa, okay. Let's change this a little bit. Where would you put nearly to mean that I didn't cry, but I almost did when I won the lottery? Right. I nearly cried when I won the lottery. I didn't cry, but I almost did. Right? I almost did. Let's take a look at another example. Let's go back to this original sentence. I cried when I won the lottery. Now let's add nearly again, but now let's change it. Let's change it to mean that actually I didn't win the lottery, but I still cried. Where would you put nearly? Yeah, right here. I cried when I nearly won the lottery. Oh, I was so close to go. I was so hoping to win all that money. Put the single word modifier immediately before the word it belongs to. Okay, that's just it. That's a simple rule. All right, so far, so good. We've talked about misplacement. Remember that any sort of description needs to go with the noun. And if it's a single word modifier, you place it before the word, right? So it's modifying or changing. Okay, let's talk about the second kind of modifier, and that's the dangling modifier. So another thing that we need to know about modifiers is that if you are adding some additional information to a sentence, you need to tell people what you're adding additional information to. And sometimes writers forget to do that. So it's not that the sentence isn't understandable. It usually is very understandable because our brains are very good at filling in the pieces. But it does kind of make your sentence a bit of a mess. Let's take a look. Looking out the window, the dog barked at the bird. This is a good sentence. Why is this a good sentence? Here we have looking out the window. You might remember this as introductory material. Yes, it's also considered a modifier. We are adding additional information to this sentence, but we've got to get this additional information next to what we are describing. So looking out the window, after we use that introductory material, we need to say who or what is looking out that window. In this case, the dog is looking out the window because he sees a bird barking at the bird. Compare these two sentences. The first one is the sentence we just talked about. Take a look at the second one. Looking out the window, the birds played while the dog barked. So that's a little confusing, isn't it? The birds played. Are these birds that are in a cage in the home? Are these birds that are outside? Where are these birds? And where is the dog? This sentence is a little more confusing than the first sentence because most people associate birds with being outside and dogs with being inside. And so we're really not sure what's going on in this sentence. Again, whatever you are modifying, you need to have right next to what it is that you are adding additional information to. So in this case, if we're starting with that gerund phrase as introductory material, looking out the window, we need to say who is looking out the window. That second sentence might make sense if the birds are in a bird cage right next to a window in the house, but it's not necessarily intuitive. This one is hopefully a little more obvious. Which one is definitely wrong? Which one has a dangling modifier? So the introductory material is laughing. Laughing is our modifier. Remember, it needs to come right next to, in this case, right before, because it's introductory material, who or what is doing that action. So who's laughing? The children or the playground? Right. Sentence one is correct. Sentence two, that's just weird. The playground is laughing? Probably not. Nope. We usually see dangling modifiers when there's a passive sentence versus an active sentence. And if you don't know active or passive, maybe that's confusing. Active is where you have the subject is doing the action. In a passive sentence, the subject is having the action done to them. So the playground doesn't do anything. What's happening to it is that it's quickly being filled with children. So that's what makes it passive. And we usually see dangling modifiers when writers are using the passive structure. When in doubt, or when you are not sure of your writing, make sure your sentences are in an active voice. Make sure the subject is what is doing that action, and you'll be a lot safer. If we wanted to fix that second sentence, we would need to make sure that laughing is paired with who is actually doing the laughing. In this case, the children. So we would just swap that around. And often that's the fix for passive sentences. To take a passive sentence and move it into an active sentence, it's usually just a matter of changing around the person or thing that's doing the action and getting that first, then putting that verb, and then putting the object after it, the traditional sentence structure. Here's another set of sentences for you. Which one has the dangling modifier? Take a look. Solemn and silent. Who or what is solemn and silent? Is it the priest or the tower's steps? Who would be solemn and silent? Do you remember the word solemn? Good. It's the priest, right? The priest. Good. So that second sentence, not a good one. Not a good one. That has a dangling modifier. Solemn and silent can't describe steps. Steps are not solemn and silent. People are. Remember, keep words and their descriptions close to each other. That will save a whole lot of time and error when it comes to using modifiers and keeping your sentences clear and crisp and beautiful. If you are ready to practice, there are 2 tests in this chapter. It's in the back, so it's just a short little chapter, but it is some challenging material. Take a look at test 1 and test 2. I have the answers at the end of this PowerPoint, and this PowerPoint is available to you in this week's folder on Blackboard, so you can take a look at the answers there once you complete these tests. Good luck, and thanks for watching this video all about modifiers and their errors.